Then they said, okay, y'all need to exercise more. You're not exercising and you're not eating the right thing. So people started doing Slim Fast and Jenny Craig. They were doing all those things and they were exercising like crazy. You look at the amount of people who were enrolling in gyms, they were exercising like crazy and they were still getting fat. It's like we're doing what y'all are telling us to do based on your facts. But like you said, the truth is what we're seeing in reality, it's not working.
Welcome to the Calorie Conundrum podcast with Coach Strick. Join us as we expand the weight loss conversation to beyond just calories and dare to ask the question, why does eating less and exercising more sometimes not produce the desired results? Here's Coach Strick to discuss this Calorie Conundrum.
Hello and welcome to the Calorie Conundrum podcast. This is Coach Strick. And I'm super excited because on today's episode, I sit down with wellness coach Chris James. Chris James is a self-taught holistic wellness coach and creator of a healthy alternative wellness brand. With over 140,000 followers, Chris teaches others how to heal using the body's natural resources. Chris believes that water fasting should be at the epicenter of one's wellness journey. Through personal experimentation and documentation, he shows others how to perform fasting safely and effectively. He has had much success aiding others as they heal from diabetes, obesity, infertility, and many other debilitating diseases. He also shares testimonials from those who have had success utilizing water fasting and other techniques. Chris's goal is to provide information that inspires his viewers to take action. This is why his closing statement is, "The application of knowledge is power." Let's hear what Chris has to say about fasting for health. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
So today we got an expert on fasting, which I'm really excited about because we haven't had anybody on the podcast yet that is, considering themselves an expert in fasting. And fasting is one of those topics that is kind of frowned upon by a lot of people. A lot of people think it's unsafe. And when you say, I'm going to do some fasting, people kind of frown and shake their head and point their finger. And, Chris, tell us how you got into health and how you found this thing called fasting.
Well, it started probably about 6-7 years ago now. I was an electrician, so working in construction field, and I'm looking at all the guys around me. They would range anywhere from 21 to right around 50 or so. And I noticed that as you got younger and younger, those 36-year-old guys, they were really beat up. Like really beat up. The old dudes were curled up, couldn't hold their urine. I mean, they were trashed, but as you got younger and younger, it wasn't really much better. And I started thinking to myself, man, this can't be my future. Like I can't stay in this industry. I don't know if it's the industry that's doing it to them or whatever, but I started looking at my own health and the amount of hours I was putting in, the conditions I was putting myself under. And I also was in the back of my head thinking about my uncle who had recently passed away from cancer at 50 years old. And he worked in houses. He did real estate, but he would like fix the houses up. And my aunt and my grandma were like, I think it was all those chemicals he was around. So I'm thinking about the chemicals I'm around. I'm thinking about the micro traumas that are happening every day. We're not properly taking care of our bodies. We're not hydrating well. And I'm seeing people literally shrivel up. So I was like, well, I got to do something different. So what really triggered it for me, though, was I was depressed. I was going through a really deep depression, and that depression caused me to start seeking outside help. Really looking to my elders for advice for how I could deal with it because it was something I had never dealt with before. And I know depression is something that is running rampant right now. And through that journey of seeking, maybe mental health, the physical health seemed to be intertwined with it. So, if I'm looking at a particular person on YouTube or reading a particular book, those two elements seem to be intertwined. So anyway, I came across a guy by the name of allegedly Dave Murphy on YouTube. and he was doing these experiments with, fasting, and he was really just showing from start to finish what his experience was. And I was blown away. I was blown away at what he was able to do as far as his weight. I was blown away. He was able to reverse nerve damage in his foot. He was always on asthma, and like he had been taking an inhaler for I don't know how long. He was able to reverse all these ailments with fasting. At the same time, during my research, I was looking at this guy named Dr. Sebi, who, at the time was really blowing up and making a big splash. And he was teaching about herbs, but he also talked about how when he was on his deathbed, he was told to fast. And it was so funny because he said the guy told him to fast for 90 days. He said, "Are you crazy?" He said, "No, are you crazy? Like you got diabetes, you're impotent, you're going blind, you're morbidly obese. You need to stop eating." So he did a 90-day fast. I think he did herbs and juice supplementally, and reversed all of his disease. So from those two particular individuals, I was like, okay, I got to try this. So that's how it started with fasting.
So when you did the fasting, was it all just this mental depression thing you were doing it for, or did you have extra weight or other pains in your body?
When I started, I wasn't what society would consider overweight. I was probably overweight, but people would look at me and be like, "Oh no, you're fine. You're skinny." People would call me skinny, but I'm sure some people out there understand the term skinny fat. Like I was skinny fat. So I looked really slim and whatever, but I had a lot of fat on me. So I was probably overweight. I wasn't obese, but that wasn't really the main reason why I wanted to fast. The main reason I did it was for health. So the depression thing led me to fasting and led me to my health journey, but it wasn't the reason I fasted. One of the reasons I fasted was I was dealing with an infection, and it was an infection at that time that I had for over a decade. And, I'd gone to the doctor, gone to the clinic, taken all the medicines, everything that you could think of, and nothing worked. So what really drove me to try fasting was prior to fasting, I had just finished seeing a specialist about this infection. It was in my urethra, and it was basically getting to the point where I felt like I didn't think I was going to be able to live with this level of uncomfortability. Like I was just so uncomfortable. And he had given me all his antibiotics and everything. And I was literally leaving his office. He was like, "Look, there's nothing more I could do. I've given you everything we've got." He was just like, "It might be dietary." And so at the end of all this money I spent with this guy, he's like, "Yeah, it might be dietary." And at the time I was listening to Dr. Sebi, and he was talking about the herbs and the dietary strategy, eating alkaline, and it just clicked. I was like, this has to be it. So that was really the reason I started fasting. Now, the thing that's interesting about it is when I started fasting, within it's hard to remember now, maybe a day or two, the irritation that I felt from that infection was gone within 1 or 2 days. So after that, I was hooked.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, so you've mentioned quite a few benefits already, but could you kind of summarize some of the benefits we might see from fasting that most people are generally going to see?
Yeah, well, the biggest one, the elephant in the room, is weight loss. That's really what draws people in most of the times. And, it is probably the most efficient way to lose weight. And I say efficient because you could lose weight faster, but this is the safest, most efficient way to lose weight without necessarily having side effects. So it's excellent for weight loss. We've used it to reverse diabetes. So my younger brother, he came on this journey with me, and he was dealing with diabetes. He was pre-diabetic, but he's what they call a symptomatic pre-diabetic. So there really wasn't any difference between him and a diabetic. He had the symptoms. And he was morbidly obese at the time. He was a veteran, and we both believed that what he experienced when he was doing his tours affected him mentally and physically. And so that was a major issue. So we were able to reverse his diabetes with fasting within 6 weeks. Infertility is a huge one. So I've got a Facebook group, and we've got a ton of women in the Facebook group, and infertility in America has been running rampant for quite some time now. I don't think it's getting enough attention, but a lot of women are having trouble conceiving. And so, we had people in our group who have been trying to conceive for 3 months, 3 years, 10 years, announcing that after just 30 days of fasting, or, they're in their park and they're maybe fasted for 2 weeks, they had conceived. And so many of these women were able to have healthy pregnancies and, give birth and everything through fasting. Clarity. Mental clarity is another really popular one, because what we're dealing with, especially in modern societies, is we have a lot of mucus on our brain. So, we're not thinking clearly. Dr. Sebi would say, it's toxic thinking. I really like that terminology, because we literally have toxicity on our brain. And what the body does, it'll use mucus to suspend toxicity. So it creates a barrier, but the mucus itself then becomes a problem, because mucus doesn't conduct electricity very well, and the brain sends electrical signals. So one thing about fasting and just like learning all this stuff was really cool, because, I come from an electrical background, and understanding how a circuit works and how the body is so similar to an electrical circuit, it really made things click for me. So mucus is a major problem we deal with, and you're able to start the process of flushing that mucus out. I remember when I did my first long fast, which was 13 days, I was coughing up mucus for a month. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, if we want to just simplify it, like, fasting can help with any kind of health problem you got. All right.
Yeah.
So I know there's many different types of fasting. What type of fasting do you most recommend people try?
That's a good question. I typically tell people, because I speak to a general audience, and I usually tell people the best fast to do is the one that works for you, which means that you really need to understand, all the different pros and cons of different fasting methods, and try them. Depending on your job, what your home life looks like, what your goals are, these are all factors that's going to play in what I would personally recommend, like in a one-on-one situation. But ultimately, the best fast for you is the one you can complete. So a lot of people want to get out, they get excited about fasting. They want to knock out 30 days or, even 2 weeks. And it sounds good, but, Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan till they get hit in the face. Fasting is going to hit you in the face. And, after 3 days, you're going to be like, why am I doing this? So number one is, with any fasting that you're going to do, you have to prep. I don't care if you're going to do, 24 hours, alternate day fasting, intermittent fasting. You want to prep your body and your mind for what it is you're looking to achieve. The other piece is finding what is going to work seamlessly in your life. Fasting's already difficult enough, so you want it to integrate seamlessly. If you're the type of person who has a lot going on in the weekends, socially speaking, it's probably a good idea to avoid fasting on the weekend. It's going to make it a little bit more difficult for you. So I might suggest to do, maybe a 5-2, where you fast, 5 days out of the week, and then on the weekend you eat, and there you could be more sociable. If you are in corporate America and you have a lot of maybe like formal dinners and things you have to do in the evening, 1 meal a day might make more sense for you, where you can, throughout the morning time, whatever, you don't eat. And then when you have your business dinners or your, different dances or whatever people do in those circles, you can eat and enjoy a meal, and people aren't looking at you weird. And because that's really what kind of makes fasting challenging, is when you don't have a support system, or if people know and they're like, yo, you're going to die doing that. Kind of like what you mentioned earlier. So I know that wasn't like a direct answer, but when I speak to a general audience, I really like to put the ball in their court. And like, I can't tell you what's going to be the best fast for you. What I will say is, I usually recommend, if someone's going to do some long-term fasting, I usually will recommend at least 3 days. And the reason why is because the body goes through a process, and it takes about 3 days or 72 hours to really, for the body to really start digging into some of those deep-seated issues and doing some of that, more deep repair work. So when you're doing the intermittent fasting, the 1 meal a day fasting, you're going to see physical changes. You'll see the weight loss and stuff. But when we think about the body holistically, or just the being holistically, you're not going to get into maybe the more energetic or mental trauma with those shorter fasts. It's really going to be more physical.
No, that's a great answer. Basically, you're saying it's just individual. It's what works for the person. And then depending on your circumstance is what you would recommend after looking at all the information, right?
Yeah. It takes some time to absorb the information. Just get to understand what fasting means, because there's so many different ways people talk about and describe it. But like, to give you like the framework, fasting really means not eating or drinking for a particular period of time. This is usually intentional. So there's a very specific difference between fasting and starvation. Starvation is where you may not be able to eat or drink, and it's out of your control. Whereas fasting is you have control. So there's a very distinct difference in the mentality of someone who's starving versus someone who's fasting.
Yeah. So you've mentioned it a couple of times. You said that this is one of the safest ways to lose weight. And then, you mentioned it earlier about safety. And so what do you say to people that say, hey, you're going to die? Like, how do you talk to people like that?
Well, back in the day, I would just, because I was really starting out, I was just like, well, I'll just prove it to you, because I had already done the research. I just hadn't experimented on myself. So back in the day, when I very first started out, I was just like, I would say, okay, how many days will it take for me to die without food or without water? And they would throw an arbitrary number out there. It's the 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, that whole thing. And so, I'll be like, okay, so if you think it's going to take me 10 days to die, then I'll see you on day 11. All right. So that's how I used to challenge it. But nowadays, we're in a different world. There's so much information, because when I very first started, it was super taboo. It's not so much anymore, but I usually just challenge people to educate themselves. Typically, when people say, oh, you're going to die, I'm like, okay, you don't actually know what fasting is. You don't know how the body functions. You may have an idea of what mainstream medical has taught you, but that's not the reality. And I usually will say something along the lines of, if they knew what they were talking about, we wouldn't be the sickest we've ever been in history. Like we just have to look at things logically. Like, if we are at the pinnacle of science and health, why are we the sickest we've ever been? We're dealing with cancer like crazy, obesity. I just did a video on obesity that's going to release tomorrow, talking about how it's the unsung epidemic is what I call it. It's, that epidemic that no one's talking about, but in modern worlds, we're all dealing with. So you have to consider the source of the information. And if you can look at it logically and say, okay, you know what, Chris, I looked at the CDC website. I see that, 500,000 people are dying from cancer, and, 250,000 people or worldwide, almost 3 million people are dying from obesity. I'm seeing the numbers. Okay, that makes sense. Then it's like, all right, well, then let's dig into this. Because if you're not willing to do the research, like if it's just a debate of facts, we're never going to get anywhere. You know what I'm saying? One thing that I will say is there's a distinct difference between fact and truth. They aren't the same thing. And I think that's where we get into a lot of problems, because when you get in debates with people, they want to debate facts. That's traditionally what we do. And it's just like, well, I can't get on that level with you because I'm a truth seeker. You could tell me all day long that the sky is blue because it reflects the water. But when I ask you to show me blue water and you can't do it, that refutes that fact. And I'm looking at truth. There's no blue water, but the sky is blue because it reflects the water. And it's like there's a difference there, right? We have to deal with that cognitive dissonance that's going on. So that's usually what I tell them, like, do your own research. Do your own research. And there's also medical professionals who are coming out who are really supporting what, guys like myself, Lauren Lockman, even Cole Robinson are saying, right? We were talking about what are we talking about medically? What's actually happening? There's a lot of information coming to the surface about autophagy and how fasting, creates or promotes this process that really should be happening naturally. But because we eat so freaking much, what did they teach you? If you want to lose weight, you eat 6 times a day, 6 small meals a day. That's how you lose weight. Eat more. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So you said something there that I want you to dive in a little bit. You said the difference between truth and facts. And I know exactly what you're talking about. That's why I started this podcast, is because I'm a truth seeker myself. And I was tired of people being overwhelmed with so many facts that they were so lost that they had no idea what they were doing when it comes to weight loss and health. So could you dive into that a little bit?
Well, a fact is something that, someone states. It's usually backed by some body of evidence, and we all kind of agree that it's true, right? We all kind of agree that this is a fact. Truth is, I can go outside and through my own experience with my own senses, without anyone explaining to me or, doing all this crazy experimentation that no one really truly understands, I could just see it, right? So truth would be every day the sun rises, or, the sun comes out and then it goes away and then it's nighttime. So day and night happen every single day. That's truth. You don't need a scientific experiment. We don't need some elaborate explanation. We know that if we observe for 24-hour period of time, it's going to be night for a period of time. It's going to be day for a period of time. A fact would be that vaccines are safe and effective. It's something that we're being preached to. Like there's evidence that states that, vaccines are safe and effective, but it's not something that we can necessarily just from our own observation see and determine it's true. Right. Yeah. Right. Because when you really start digging into it, you have a lot of people who are like, well, my child was damaged by vaccines, or, there's poisons that they're putting in the vaccine. So how can that make sense that a poison is going to be used in a health product? And so there's this debate, but you can't really debate truth because everybody can plainly see it. The sky is blue. A fact might be that, the water is reflecting and that's why it's blue, but that's not necessarily the truth. But we do know that the sky is blue. That would be, truth. So that idea that there's a difference between fact and truth is something that will cause you to expand your mind, and through the open-mindedness that comes along with understanding there's a difference between fact and truth, it really opens you up to a realm of possibility that you were closed off to before. Because we've been taught that the gold standard for evidence and stuff is a peer-reviewed study that's published in a major journal. If that's not the case, if you're talking about something related to the medical field, health or whatever, and it's not peer reviewed, double blind, in a reputable journal, then it's not real. It's just some stuff some guy on YouTube is saying. And that's the part that's really sick about it, because what we're finding is people aren't really testing this stuff for themselves. We're really just allowing information to be disseminated, and we're not kicking the tires. Like, is this true? And then we also got to consider when you absorb information from those sources, you're talking about controlled environments. You're not talking about reality, really, because in order for it to be duplicatable, you have to cut down all these different variables that makes life life. Like, I'm only concerned about what works in real life. Like, theory is great. It's fun. It's like anime, you know, like it's fun to watch. Yeah, it's like a movie, like cool. But we all know that Goku isn't a real person. You know what I'm saying? So what can we do? What can we apply in real life? That's the only thing that matters. If you take the idea that calories in, calories out works, and but in real life it only works for 1 to 6% of people, then it's not working. Like, we need something that works for the majority of people, and that's all I'm really concerned with. Hopefully that helps expand there.
Yeah, that's a great explanation, and I'm on board with you. And that this is the type of thinking that I'm trying to get to the people, because people don't understand that the facts that you're talking about are the scientific studies. They are what's agreed upon as being facts. But people don't realize that, like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be truth. And they don't realize that a lot of times those facts are bought and paid for. And so, if I have a company that's making billions of dollars and I can fund studies to get a certain result, the result is going to be what I want it to be. And people can argue that that doesn't happen or that's not true science and whatnot. But the truth of the matter is that's happening, and that's being filtered down to the news, to your doctor's office, as facts, as what's true about your health. And people need to realize that if it's true, if it's facts and it's true, then when you apply it like you said, then it should work for you. If it doesn't, then there's something wrong with those facts.
Right. See, you actually brought up a really good point, because in the 90s, we weren't talking, the discussion was completely different. We were looking at sugar. We were looking at tobacco. We were looking at alcohol. My brother just posted a meme, which, memes, but it was a picture of it was like a snippet from like a newspaper or something. It was pretty much an advertisement for pregnant mothers to smoke cigarettes. And they had all of this science to prove that smoking cigarettes actually aided in the process of the gestational process of a baby, and I don't know, the health of a mother. I don't really know what all this craziness was, but they had science. Big Tobacco was able to skate for a very long time. They were obviously giving people cancer and all types of birth defects, but they also had science to back up the statements they were making, which is why they were able to get away with it for so freaking long, right? And then, of course, you have the federal government through, I guess, the FDA and the different outlets were pushing the food pyramid on us, and it seemed like when they started pushing the food pyramid on us, demonizing sugar and fat and all these other things, but saying, hey, got to eat all this weed and bread and pasta and all this stuff. And we started listening because these are the professionals. These are the people with all the facts. We got bigger. Then they said, okay, y'all need to exercise more. You're not exercising and you're not eating the right thing. So people started doing Slim Fast and Jenny Craig. They were doing all those things and they were exercising like crazy. You look at the amount of people who were enrolling in gyms. They were exercising like crazy and they were still getting fat. And so it's like, we're doing what y'all are telling us to do based on your facts. But like you said, the truth is what we're seeing in reality, it's not working. And that's the realm that we got to deal with. Like, what's actually working?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So there's a couple things I want to hit on. One is, I know I saw on your website you had some information about water, and I know water fasting is a type of fasting. Does it matter what type of water you're drinking?
Yes. I'll say that there's a difference. You could use any kind of water you want and you'll still see results. So I'm not going to sit up here and say that, if you don't use the right kind of water, you're not going to get results. You will, because fasting is a really powerful practice regardless, but it matters because water is not created equal. So if you consider civilization, let's just say 200 years ago, it was very like a very matter of fact that you would create a settlement near a body of water, a natural body of water. Why? Because we are now, science tells us, the facts tells us we're 75% water. In reality, we're closer to 99% water because we're made of human cells, and you observe a cell, it's really just water. That's all it is. But if we are, let's just say we're 75% water, that means that we need to be close to water. Water is very important to us, and a natural body of water is going to manufacture healthy water. It's really important that our water is not contaminated, because if the water you're drinking is carrying contaminants in the form of toxicities or even minerals like inorganic minerals, those things will deposit in our system and it will have an effect on us, right? So one of the really popular waters right now is mineral water, and they'll tell you that they get it from like a natural spring or volcanic water or whatever, and we're supposed to be impressed because it's got all these minerals in it, and you can taste the minerals in it. Especially the more sensitive your tongue becomes, I could taste it. It tastes like sweat. It tastes like sweat in the water. The problem with that is when you take water from a natural source and you run it through a hose and you bottle it up, you kill the natural energy in the water. So we have to understand that water is alive. It's not just H2O. It's alive. And if your water is energetically dead, the effect it has on you is different, and the effect the minerals in the water have on you is different. So I promote distilled water, and the reason I promote distilled water is because we don't live close. Most of us don't live close to natural bodies of water. We're not bottling it ourselves or drinking it at the source. And you don't want anything extra in your water because the energy in the water is dead. So the way those minerals and stuff affect you are going to be negative. You think they're going to be good because they tell you, oh, you need minerals. Your body doesn't produce minerals, blah, blah, blah. But these inorganic minerals, that's how you get crystals in your urine. Yeah, those stones, you get crystals in your gallbladder. These stones and stuff form in your gallbladder. This is where you get a lot of joint pain and stuff. It's from inorganic minerals being deposited in your body because the body can't properly process them out. And that's because we're taking it in forms, especially in water, that's not charged. See, when you water has a positive and a not negative charge. Some of the minerals are going to bind to the positive charge. Some of the minerals are going to bind to the negative charge. This structures the water. When the energy or the charge is not available, you don't have that. So you get bulk water, and the bulk water, number one, it's bigger than a normal, a healthy water molecule, so it doesn't absorb into the cells, but also the binding doesn't happen, and so that material, that inorganic material in the water, will get left behind in your body. Water is supposed to be a cleanser. So if you imagine it's like a sponge, if you have, let's say you've got a spill on your countertop and you've got a wet soaking sponge, you're never going to be able to clean it up, right? And that's what bulk water is. It's a wet soaking sponge that won't clean up the water, won't clean up the mess, and also it can leave deposits behind. Whereas if you distill your water, even if it's not energetically where it needs to be, it will actually at least absorb the inorganic materials and flush them out of your system. But I take it a step further. So I distill my water to take all the crap out, but then I also take it and I put it in a clear glass jar. I set it outside in the sun, and I allow the sun to energize the water. Because one thing that people don't realize about water is not like just a regular liquid. It's actually a crystalline. It has a crystalline structure. And the importance of that is their crystals have almost an infinite capacity for storage. They can store data. And the sunlight is data. It's information. So one of the jobs I used to have back in the day, I sold fiber optic internet service for Verizon. And one of the first things I learned was fiber optic internet was light running through glass. So right now, most of us are using fiber optics. You probably don't even know it. It usually runs to a node, to the pole, the telephone pole outside your house, and then it comes to your house with copper wire. But most of the data is going to travel, through this light running through glass. That's data. And what we got to understand is there's good light or good data, good energy, and then there's not so good or negative light, negative energy. So like, the lights from our lamps and, our artificial light, our cell phones. That's why cell phones have those blue light filters on there. Those different light frequencies will affect us because we're energetic creatures. But the sun is the natural light. It's got the full spectrum of light. And so the sun will actually charge the water. And because it's a crystalline structure, it will retain that information. And then when you drink it, you're getting sunlight through the water. And you'll actually notice that it changes the flavor of the water, the texture of the water. Like you'll notice it changes the water. The sun also has the ability to further break down inorganic materials and compounds in the water. So the distillation process is not perfect. There's going to be material and stuff left in it, but the sun will kind of complete that process. And, we're just mimicking nature, like water in a natural body of water, or you think about dew and mist and things like that. The sun heats it up, it expands, boom, it goes up into the clouds. And then when it collects enough, it rains, and it kind of has this water cycle. And we're just kind of utilizing nature's water cycle.
That's very interesting. I have to look into that more myself. Never heard that explained in that way before.
That's what I'm here to do, man. The water is I actually have a class later on tonight, and we're in our hydration section. We go deep. It gets much deeper than that. But, when you just ask, like, what kind of water should you have with your fast? I like to give optimal information. Yeah. You can go and get the alkaline water if you want. I don't recommend it. It's going to have material in it that you don't want in your body. Typically, it's going to be chemically alkalized, which is not the same as a natural alkalization. Yeah. And you're spending a lot of money on this. So you can do it and you can fast with it and you'll get benefit, but you're not helping yourself.
All right, Chris. Well, I know you've worked with a lot of people, doing this fasting thing. Can you tell us a couple of success stories of people that have done fasting and had, success with it?
Yeah. It's tough to even nail down one or two. It's, I had a lady who was dealing with an ulcer. She had an ulcer for, I don't know, maybe a decade. It just wouldn't heal. It just wouldn't go away. She's on medication. One of the things about fasting that I haven't really touched much on is how it really aids in mental healing. So when you're fasting, you become more aware of your energetic body and, your thoughts. And it will start flushing out negative energy, negative thoughts, negative emotions. And negative emotions aren't bad. It's just that we're overrun with it. Like life is all about balance, and we're not in balance. So the body starts to create balance. But when you're not eating and you're dealing with something that's wrong with your stomach, or if it has something to do with your digestive system, you're giving your body an opportunity to rest. So you got to consider that the body for, 30, 40, 50 years, however old you are, has been constantly running without any type of break, especially in modern society where we're taught eat 3 to 6 times a day. And so by giving herself an opportunity to have a break from taking in the food, that energy that's typically used to digest can now be, used for healing, as well as, you're not irritating your system with the different food products you're eating, because most of us aren't eating the right thing. So it makes it hard for the body to digest. So through the process of fasting, as well as releasing energetically some of those traumatic things that happen and, verbalizing those things, she was able to heal her ulcer that she had been dealing with for, 10 years. we had another guy who, was dealing with being overweight. He wasn't obese, but he was overweight. He was a diabetic, full-blown diabetic, on medication. Doctor has him on medication, high blood pressure, and anemic. And he started a regimen of fasting he would do it. Well, he started with a 5-day fast, and we call it the 5-2. So he fasted 5 days, then he ate for 2 days, then he went back into a 5-day fast, and he ate for 2 days. And then after that, he switched to a 3-day fast. So he would fast 3 days a week minimum. And over the period of maybe 2 months, he completely reversed his diabetes. His doctor took him off the medication. His blood pressure is completely normalized. And although I don't know if anemia is something that's supposedly irreversible, but it's not common to be able to reverse. You get it, you're always on it, you're taking medication. He's no longer anemic. My sister, this is a pretty interesting story. She was dealing with PCOS, endometriosis. She was infertile, as well as she was morbidly obese. Over the span of about 1.5 to 2 years, she lost 140 pounds. Her doctor had to sit her down and tell her that she needs to start practicing safe sex because she was no longer infertile. She was dealing with elevated levels of testosterone because, male and female both have testosterone. But when women get too much of it, they start to grow hair on their chest and their face. So she had facial hair. It deepens their voice. They become more masculine physically. And so those issues started to subside. And she had really debilitating periods, menstrual cycles, to the point where, she couldn't go to work sometimes, had to take medicine, blah, 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 all of that stuff, which a lot of women are dealing with. All of that started to subside. The last time I talked to her, she told me that it wasn't 100%. She wasn't 100%, reversed, but it was such a major difference that, she can get pregnant now, and she can work when she has her cycles. The pain is more typical. The list really goes on and on, to be honest with you. We actually had a lady in our group very early on who was dealing with cancer. I don't remember what kind of cancer it was, but she did a 21-day fast. So she did some tests. The doctors told her she had cancer. They scheduled some type of surgery or something, maybe to remove it. And she was like, well, let me just try this health thing first. She did a 21-day fast, and she literally wrote me a letter and was crying, writing the letter because the doctors told her that she no longer had cancer. So we've seen some really incredible things. People being able to regrow their hair. My mom actually had a patch of hair fall out. Her hair had turned stark white and a patch fell out. Maybe you would call it alopecia. I don't know. She never had it formally diagnosed. But just from fasting over the period of about, I know she did. She started with a 3-day fast, and then over the period of about 3 months, she would just fast intermittently. Her hair started to not only grow back, it also started to grow back black. So, yeah, I can go on and on. We've seen phenomenal things.
So we've learned 2 things. One, fasting can help with lots of different things. And you got some really bad genetics.
Well, see, that's interesting, though, because that's what we all think.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But it's the environmental stressors. I eat what my mom eats. I eat what my dad eats. So we're all eating the same things, and we all have the same habits. And so we're thinking it's genetics, but it's really environmental.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've talked about that multiple times on the podcast. But Chris, this has been a great podcast. How can the listeners find out more about you and the work you do?
Appreciate you having me on. So you can my website is ahealthyalternative.org. I also have a YouTube channel, A Healthy Alternative. So you just search A Healthy Alternative on YouTube. We have a Facebook group, which we've been shadow banned for a few years now. Go figure why we would get shadow banned on Facebook. So it's a little challenging to find us, but we are A Healthy Alternative there. I'm a healthy alternative on all my platforms, on Instagram and whatever. We've got an initiative right now. We're building an app. So if you join my Instagram, which is a.healthy.alternative, in the bio section, you could see information. You just click a link in the bio section. You can see information about the app and what I have going on. And essentially our goal with the app is to provide a place where we could talk about this alternative information openly. And we don't have to worry about being censored. We could talk about what's really working, like truth versus fact. And so it's a place for us to really grow and heal with unimpeded. Because right now, if you Google search certain things, there's a way that traffic is directed. Like Google has a way to direct your traffic one way or the other. And so people aren't really seeing what's really out there in the way of natural therapies. And so we want to make sure to promote natural therapies. And, you know, we're going to be having some contests and things available to make it fun to lose weight. You can win money and all sorts of things. So that's pretty much it. I also have a book that I released. I don't know if you got a copy. Oh, yeah, here it is. I got a copy. It's Metamorphosis, A Journey to Holistic Wellness. It's a really good starter book for learning all this information. You know, if you're interested in fasting or just I talk about a few different therapies, liver and gallbladder flushes. We talk about essential oils in there and how to utilize plants in the place of medicine. So it's a really great starter book, very easy to read and understand. It's doesn't have a lot of legal jargon or medical jargon in there. I highly recommend. You can find that on Amazon as well as on my website at healthyalternative.org.
Fantastic. Before we leave, Chris, could you tell the people what you mean by healthy alternative?
Yeah. So the concept for the brand is I wanted to create a space where we could come together with our collective knowledge and experience and talk about healthy alternatives to modern medicine. That's what a healthy alternative means. So the brand is really all about holistic wellness, not just fasting, but mental health, energetic health, spiritual health, physical health. You know, what are we supposed to be eating? What should we be consuming? Music and you know, type of people should we be consuming? You know, what type of practices should we utilize? Meditation, breath work, etc. And so that was really what a healthy alternative means. It's a healthy alternative to modern medicine.
Fantastic. Chris, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Chris. Fasting is one of the most powerful things we can do for our health. Not only because fasting can help improve health and reduce illness, but because it's something we can do for ourselves. We don't need a prescription and we don't need permission. All we have to do is pay attention to the truth and not get distracted with the overwhelming amount of facts. Use logic to determine if something works, not emotions based on what others have told you. Take a look around at what is actually happening. Try things out for yourself and you may be surprised. As Chris says, the application of knowledge is power. And I would add, it is your responsibility to step into your power. By applying truth-based knowledge, you can become a powerful force that can change not only your own life, but the lives of others. And with that said, this is Coach Strick saying thanks for listening. And remember, when calories in, calories out doesn't work, that, my friend, is a calorie conundrum.
This podcast, including Coach Strick and guests, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects for the use of any information contained herein. Coach Strick and/or guests may recommend products or services in which they have a direct or indirect financial interest. To find out more, please visit www.calorieconundrum.com.